Welcome back! In this unit, we will be delving into ethical procurement. Specifically, we will discuss ethics versus morals versus laws and what the difference between the three are. We will also identify common laws to be aware of when making strategic procurement decisions. Of course, we will also discuss codes of ethics and key areas of risks, as well as various models for making ethical decisions. Ethical procurement is becoming increasingly important in our ever more complex, interconnected, and global economy. In the past, the main focus for most companies was profit, but more and more companies now understand and value ethical procurement. So what exactly is ethical procurement? Ethical procurement refers to the consideration of a wide range of issues relating to the ethical and sustainability goals of an organization. Ethical procurement is a company's code of conduct and commitment to environmental, social, and legal issues. It involves a set of principles which guide a company to proactively eliminate unethical practices throughout its supply chain. Ethical procurement requires a company to understand its societal obligations, expectations, and social responsibility. Why is ethical procurement important? In today's society, it is just as important to be a good corporate citizen as it is to make profits. As such, today's procurement teams must embed ethics into their processes in addition to the conventional focus on a good ROI. Of course, there is a clear intrinsic value in ethical procurement. It's simply the right thing to do. However, there are many other reasons why it's beneficial for a company to prioritize ethics in their procurement practices. The basis of ethical procurement is trust, which occurs not only between buyers and suppliers, but the reciprocal effects can also propagate downwards all the way to the customer. At the heart of ethical procurement lies trust. When a company loses trust through unethical practices, this can be very damaging in terms of public perception and customer relations. Unethical behavior can have a substantially negative impact on business, harming profits in both the short and long term through boycotts and negative press. In addition, it can also damage supplier relationships and hinder the efficacy of the company's procurement practices. A company in this position may struggle to attract new suppliers or gain incentives or loyalty discounts from existing ones as other businesses won't want to associate with them. They may even find themselves being scrutinized more rigorously by compliance teams or even being rejected for funding from financial institutions. While seemingly all fine and dandy, ethical procurement is not easily achieved. It is important for procurement teams to identify the types of ethical issues they may face so they can develop ethical standards and practices. Due to the complex and interconnected nature of modern supply chains, there can be many potential challenges to ethical procurement. So, what are the challenges of ethical procurement? Illegal supply chain practices can involve the purchase, whether knowingly or unknowingly, of products that have been produced by illegal or immoral means. This may include, for example, stolen goods, human rights abuses, child labor, counterfeit goods, and environmental damage. Bribery is another issue that has become increasingly more prevalent in the last decade. This involves special consideration or support for certain candidates during contract negotiation or supplier evaluation in return for illicit payments or other incentives. Coercion and intimidation is when threats of harm or loss are made instead of bribes. Intimidation is the act of making someone feel afraid to achieve compliance. Both can have severe psychological effects. Is one example. The ethical controversy surrounding Apple and its supplier Foxconn centers on a series of workers' suicides and reports of harsh labor conditions in Foxconn's Chinese factories. In 2010, at least 14 Foxconn employees died by suicide, with 18 attempts reported. These incidents highlighted issues such as excessive overtime, low wages, and intense work pressure. In response, Foxconn implemented measures like installing suicide prevention nets, increasing wages, and offering counseling services. However, concerns about labor practices persisted, including reports of forced overtime, inadequate safety measures, and poor living conditions. Apple faced criticism for its oversight of supplier practices and the imbalance of power in its supply chain. Extortion is another serious crime involving threats for gain. This is the other side of bribery, whereby requests for money are made in exchange for favored consideration or to prevent other forms of corruption from being exposed. Another issue is influence peddling. This is the practice of granting contracts to a certain supplier in return for compensation, such as special incentives or discounts. Simply speaking, in support of granting contracts to a particular supplier for these reasons is considered influence peddling. Nepotism refers to the practice of giving unearned preference or advantage to suppliers because they are one's friends or relatives. It can lead to workplace dissatisfaction and hinder merit-based progress. Fair policies can help mitigate, but there may be unintended consequences over time with continued favoritism. Because ethical procurement is so important these days, it's essential for companies to develop an ethical procurement strategy. This should begin with a thorough review and risk assessment of current supply chains. From here, potential problem areas can be identified and mitigated or resolved. It's useful to develop open dialogue and consult with others buying in the same areas so that information can be shared. Consultation with local and international experts can also be beneficial. For ethical standards to be successful, a written formalized policy is required. This should clearly state the expectations and obligations of staff, management, and suppliers. Training around this should be given to procurement teams and managers. Mechanisms should be put in place to ensure reviews and refinements to the policy as required. This may be due, for example, to legislative changes or public awareness of or support for certain ethical issues. In an increasingly interconnected environment, ethical procurement becomes not only more challenging, but also more important than ever before. Companies that want to succeed must have a thorough understanding of ethical procurement, as well as sound policies and strategies in place to ensure their procurement practices are ethical. Otherwise, the consequences could be severe.